What if a candy stand could change someone's life forever? In sun-drenched Los Angeles, 8-year-old Tommy stands behind a small card table, boxes of candy bars stacked neatly beside him. His tired eyes hold determination far beyond his years. Each sale brings him one step closer to helping his mom, battling stage 4 cancer with mounting medical bills their family can't afford. The neighborhood feels different today. A tall figure appears in the distance, walking slowly down the palm-lined street. Nobody expects what happens next. The man stops at Tommy's stand, and in one moment, everything changes. This isn't just another celebrity encounter. This is the story of how Keanu Reeves turned a boy's simple candy stand into something extraordinary. When the cameras started rolling, no one could hold back their tears. But first, let's go back to where it all began, on a quiet Los Angeles morning, when Tommy decided he had to do something to save his mom. The scorching Los Angeles sun beat down on Valley Oak Street, where perfectly manicured lawns stretched as far as the eye could see. Between the palm trees and pristine houses sat a modest 2-story home, its paint slightly faded, its garden showing signs of neglect. This was where Tommy Martinez lived with his mom, Sarah, a single mother who had always filled their home with laughter and warmth, until the diagnosis changed everything 6 months ago. Tommy stood in his bedroom, staring at the pile of candy boxes he'd convinced the local store owner to let him buy at wholesale price. His savings from birthday money and allowance had gone into this investment. At just 8 years old, Tommy understood more about medical bills and financial hardship than any child should. His brown eyes, matching his mother's, held a mix of worry and hope as he carefully arranged the candy bars in his red wagon. Sarah Martinez had always been the neighborhood's favorite kindergarten teacher, known for her bright smile and endless patience. Now, she spent most days in bed, her once vibrant energy drained by aggressive chemotherapy treatments. The medical bills arrived relentlessly, each one thicker than the last, while the insurance covered less than they'd hoped. Tommy would often find his mother at the kitchen table late at night, calculator in hand, shoulders shaking with silent tears. The idea came to Tommy one evening when he overheard a conversation between his mother and Aunt Rosa. The next round of treatment cost $20,000, his mother had whispered, voice breaking. "I don't know how we'll manage." That night, Tommy couldn't sleep. He remembered how the previous summer, his friend Jack had made enough money from a lemonade stand to buy a new bike. If Jack could earn that much selling lemonade, surely Tommy could help his mom by selling candy. Every day after school, Tommy would set up his small card table on the corner of Valley Oak and Maple Drive. His aunt had helped him make a sign that read, "Candy bars $2. Help save my mom." The words were written in wobbly children's handwriting, decorated with hearts and stars in red marker. Some days were better than others. Kind neighbors would stop by, often paying much more than the asking price. Others would walk past, offering sympathetic smiles but nothing more. Tommy kept track of his earnings in a Spider-Man notebook, adding up the numbers each night before bed. After 2 weeks, he had earned $147.23. Nowhere near enough, but he refused to give up. His mother's next treatment was scheduled for Friday, and though he knew his small candy stand couldn't possibly raise enough money in time, Tommy believed in miracles. He had no idea that on this ordinary Wednesday morning, one was about to walk right up to his candy stand. The summer days fell into a steady rhythm as Tommy refined his candy-selling operation. Each morning, he'd wake up early to help his mother with breakfast. Simple toast and tea was all she could manage lately. He'd straighten her pillows, make sure her water glass was full, and promise to come straight home after his candy stand closed for the day. Sarah would smile weakly, her once vibrant face now pale and drawn, but her eyes still sparkled with love for her determined little boy. By 3:30 p.m. every afternoon, Tommy would wheel his red wagon to his usual spot. The corner of Valley Oak and Maple Drive had become his second home. He arranged his candy bars meticulously, chocolate ones in the shade to prevent melting, fruity ones displayed prominently in front to catch children's eyes. His Spider-Man notebook, now filled with careful calculations and hopeful projections, sat beside his cash box. Mrs. Whitlock from the corner house always stopped by on her evening walk, buying a candy bar even though Tommy knew she was diabetic. "For my grandchildren," she'd say with a wink, slipping an extra $5 into his collection jar. Mr. Rodriguez, the retired mailman, would pause during his daily jog, wiping sweat from his brow while chatting with Tommy about baseball and sometimes purchasing multiple candy bars for the neighborhood kids. But as the days wore on, the reality of his mother's situation became increasingly dire. One evening, Tommy overheard Aunt Rosa talking in hushed tones on the phone with the hospital. "The cancer's spreading faster than expected," she whispered, unaware that Tommy sat at the top of the stairs, clutching his notebook. "The next round of treatment needs to start immediately or—" Her voice trailed off, but Tommy understood the unspoken words. That night, he counted his earnings 3 times, hoping the numbers would somehow multiply. $373.45, not even close to the $20,000 they needed. Tommy's small hands trembled as he wrote the amount in his notebook, but he refused to let tears fall. His mother needed him to be strong. The next morning brought unexpected challenges. The forecast predicted record-breaking temperatures, and Tommy's chocolate bars began melting almost immediately. A group of teenagers passed by, laughing at his baby candy stand. One particularly hot afternoon, he sold only 2 candy bars in 4 hours. Still, Tommy stood his ground, occasionally spraying himself with the water bottle Aunt Rosa had insisted he bring. His mother's condition worsened noticeably. She could barely keep food down now, and the stairs had become an impossible challenge. Tommy started sleeping on the living room couch to be closer to her bedroom, waking up multiple times each night when he heard her coughing. During the day, while he manned his candy stand, Aunt Rosa would stay with Sarah, sending Tommy hourly text updates on her ancient flip phone. The neighborhood had noticed a change in Tommy, too. His usual cheerful demeanor had been replaced by a quiet determination. Dark circles appeared under his eyes, and his school teacher had caught him falling asleep during math class. Yet every afternoon he'd be at his post, straightening his sign even when the wind knocked it over, managing a smile for every potential customer. Word about Tommy's cause had spread through the local community Facebook group, bringing occasional customers from neighboring streets. A local news blogger had even stopped by to take pictures, promising to share Tommy's story. But the bigger media outlets weren't interested. After all, sick parents and children trying to help them weren't exactly breaking news in Los Angeles. On this particular Wednesday morning, Tommy had woken up to find his mother's fever dangerously high. Aunt Rosa called the hospital while he held his mom's hand, feeling more helpless than ever. The doctor's words echoed in his head. The treatment needs to start by Friday. Tommy knew that meant they needed the money by Thursday tomorrow. As he set up his stand that afternoon, his movements were mechanical, his hope fading with each passing hour. The street was quieter than usual, the crushing heat keeping most people indoors. Tommy sat on his folding chair, watching cars pass by without stopping, each one taking a small piece of his optimism with it. His candy supply was running low. He'd need to buy more soon, but that would mean dipping into his earnings. The impossible math of it all weighed heavily on his young shoulders. Just then, a sleek black car turned onto Valley Oak Drive, moving slowly as if looking for an address. Tommy straightened up, adjusting his sign one more time. He didn't know it yet, but this ordinary Wednesday was about to become the most extraordinary day of his life. The black car slowed to a stop across the street, and a tall figure emerged. Tommy watched as the man paused, seeming to take in the scene before him. He wore simple dark jeans and a black t-shirt, his longish dark hair moving slightly in the warm breeze. There was something familiar about him, but Tommy couldn't quite place it. The man crossed the street with unhurried steps, his kind eyes fixed on Tommy's modest setup. As he drew closer, Tommy felt his heart skip. He recognized him now from the movie posters plastered across the mall. This was Keanu Reeves, The actor his mom loved from those Matrix movies she used to watch before she got sick. "Hey there, buddy," Keanu said, his voice gentle and warm as he approached the stand. "What have you got here?" He crouched down slightly, bringing himself to Tommy's eye level. Tommy noticed how different he looked up close. Not like a movie star at all, but more like someone's friendly uncle. "I'm selling candy bars, sir," Tommy replied, his voice smaller than usual. "They're $2 each." He gestured to his sign, the red marker letters suddenly looking childish and amateur. But Keanu's eyes lingered on the words, "Help save my mom," with genuine interest. "Tell me about your mom," Keanu said softly, pulling up the spare folding chair Tommy kept for elderly customers. He sat down as if he had all the time in the world, his full attention focused on the young boy before him. Something in his manner made Tommy feel safe, understood. Tommy's words tumbled out, telling the stranger everything. About his mom's cancer diagnosis 6 months ago, about the mounting medical bills, about how she couldn't teach kindergarten anymore because she was too sick. He explained how he'd been trying to raise money for her treatment, but had only managed to save a fraction of what they needed. As Tommy spoke, a small crowd began to gather. Neighbors who usually drove past now stopped their cars, stepping out to witness the unusual scene. Mrs. Whitlock emerged from her house, phone in hand, while Mr. Rodriguez jogged up, doing a double-take when he recognized the actor. Keanu listened intently, never interrupting, his expression growing more thoughtful with each detail. When Tommy mentioned the Friday deadline for his mother's treatment, the actor's eyes flickered with something, recognition, perhaps, or memory. He asked questions about Sarah's specific type of cancer, about her doctors, about Tommy's support system. "How much do you need for the treatment?" Keanu asked finally, his voice carrying a weight that made the gathering crowd fall silent. Tommy opened his Spider-Man notebook, pointing to the number he'd written and rewritten so many times. $20,000. Keanu nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving Tommy's face. The boy stood straighter, trying to look brave despite the trembling in his hands. He'd learned not to expect miracles, but something about this moment felt different. The usual sounds of the neighborhood, sprinklers, distant traffic, children playing, seemed to fade away, leaving only the heavy Los Angeles heat and the sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. "How much have you managed to save so far?" Keanu asked gently, gesturing to Tommy's cash box. The boy pulled out his carefully counted stack of bills and coins, secured with rubber bands. $373.45, Tommy answered, his voice catching slightly. "I know it's not much, but I'm trying really hard." The crowd had grown larger now, with several people holding up phones, capturing this unexpected moment. A mother whispered to her child, explaining who Keanu was. But the actor seemed oblivious to the attention, his focus completely on Tommy and his story. "Would you mind if I met your mom?" Keanu asked, surprising everyone. Tommy's eyes widened. "She's just across the street, but she's not feeling very well today," he explained, pointing to his house. Keanu nodded understandingly. "That's okay. We can go say a quick hello if she's up for it." As Tommy packed up his candy stand, he'd never left it unattended before. Aunt Rosa emerged from the house, having spotted the gathering from the window. She froze mid-step when she recognized Keanu Reeves standing on her sister's front lawn. The actor gave her a warm smile and extended his hand. "I'm Keanu," he said simply, as if he were any ordinary neighbor. "Tommy's been telling me about Sarah." Aunt Rosa's eyes filled with tears as she shook his hand. "She's having a rough day," she managed to say, "but she's awake. Would you like to come in?" The crowd watched in amazement as Keanu followed Tommy and Aunt Rosa into the modest house, his tall frame ducking slightly to enter the front door. Inside, the home told its own story. Medical bills spread across the kitchen table, a hospital bed visible in what used to be the living room. Photos on the walls showing a healthier, happier time. Sarah Martinez lay propped up on pillows, her thin frame barely making a dent in the bedding. When she saw Keanu enter behind her son, Her tired eyes widened in disbelief. "I must be dreaming," she whispered, attempting to sit up straighter. Keanu moved quickly to her side. "Please don't get up," he said softly. "Tommy's been telling me about your fight." The moment hung in the air. A dying mother, her desperate son, and an unexpected visitor who seemed to understand their struggle on a deeply personal level. None of them could have predicted what would happen next, as Keanu Reeves reached into his back pocket and pulled out his phone, ready to make a call that would change everything. Keanu stepped away from Sarah's bedside for a moment, phone pressed to his ear. His quiet voice carried through the small house as he spoke to someone about medical facilities and treatment protocols. Tommy sat beside his mother, holding her hand, while Aunt Rosa hovered nervously in the doorway. After several minutes, Keanu returned, his face set with determination. "Sarah," he said, pulling up a chair next to her bed, "I lost my sister to cancer. She fought hard, just like you're fighting now. I know what this disease does to families, especially the children." He glanced at Tommy, who sat straighter under his gaze. "I want to help," Keanu continued, his voice gentle but firm. "I've spoken with my foundation, and we're going to cover all your medical expenses. Not just this treatment, but everything you need until you're better." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And we'll make sure Tommy has everything he needs too." Sarah's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Tommy stared at Keanu, not quite understanding at first. "You mean, Mom can get her medicine?" he asked, his voice small and hopeful. Keanu nodded, reaching out to squeeze the boy's shoulder. "But that's not all," Keanu said, turning back to Sarah. "I've talked to the head of oncology at Cedars-Sinai. They have a new treatment program that might be perfect for your case. They're expecting your call, and everything's been arranged. You can start tomorrow." Aunt Rosa collapsed into a nearby chair, sobbing with relief. Tommy wrapped his arms around his mother, who held him tightly, her tears falling into his hair. "I don't know how to thank you," Sarah whispered, looking at Keanu through her tears. "Your son already did," Keanu replied, gesturing toward the candy stand visible through the window. "He showed me what real courage looks like. Sometimes the universe puts us in the right place at the right time. We just have to be ready to act." The news spread quickly through the neighborhood. The crowd outside had grown, and when Keanu emerged from the house, a spontaneous applause erupted. But he quickly redirected the attention, pointing to Tommy, who stood in the doorway. "This is your hero," Keanu said to the gathered neighbors. This boy was ready to save his mom one candy bar at a time. Local news crews began arriving, drawn by social media posts about Keanu's presence. But before they could start their interviews, Keanu had one more surprise. He walked over to Tommy's candy stand and bought every remaining candy bar, handing them out to the neighborhood children who had gathered. Then, pulling out his wallet, he counted out exactly $373.45, matching every penny Tommy had earned. "This," he said, handing the money to Tommy, "is for your college fund, because your mom is going to be there to see you graduate." The gesture wasn't about the money. It was about honoring Tommy's effort, about showing him that his determination and love hadn't gone unnoticed. As the sun began to set on Valley Oak Drive, a small boy's impossible mission had transformed into a miracle, all because a Hollywood star had stopped to buy some candy and ended up buying into something much bigger: hope. In the days following Keanu's visit, Sarah Martinez began her treatment at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. The doctors were optimistic, combining traditional chemotherapy with innovative immunotherapy that showed promising results. Tommy moved in temporarily with Aunt Rosa, who lived just 10 minutes from the hospital, allowing him to visit his mother every day after school. The story of the candy stand and Keanu's intervention spread rapidly across social media platforms. Major news networks picked up the story, touching hearts nationwide with images of Tommy's handwritten sign and Keanu's quiet act of generosity. But unlike many viral stories that fade quickly, this one sparked a movement. Parents across Los Angeles began sharing stories of their own struggles with medical bills. A local business owner, inspired by Tommy's determination, started a program called Sweet Support, encouraging children to channel their entrepreneurial spirit into helping others. The initiative provided resources and mentorship to young people who wanted to make a difference in their communities. Sarah's kindergarten school rallied around their beloved teacher. Her former students, now spread across different grades, organized their own fundraising events. They created hand-drawn cards that covered an entire wall in Sarah's hospital room, each one a reminder of the lives she had touched through her teaching. Keanu's foundation didn't stop with Sarah's medical bills. They established a partnership with Cedars-Sinai to create the Candy Stand Fund, supporting families facing similar challenges with childhood cancer treatments. The foundation ensured that no parent would have to choose between saving their child and keeping their home. Tommy returned to his corner spot on Valley Oak Drive, but not to sell candy. Instead, he set up a message board where people could share their own stories of hope and healing. The simple card table became a gathering place for the community, a symbol of how one small act of kindness could ripple outward endlessly. 3 months into Sarah's treatment, the doctors reported significant improvement. The aggressive cancer cells were responding to the therapy, retreating from the places they had invaded. Tommy kept a calendar in his room, marking off each day with a green marker when the news was good, building a visual record of his mother's recovery. Keanu kept his involvement quiet, checking in regularly through his foundation, but avoiding publicity. He sent Tommy occasional notes of encouragement, each one signed simply "Your Friend, K." The actor's understated approach emphasized what mattered most, not the celebrity involvement, but the human connection that had sparked it all. Local businesses that had watched Tommy's daily efforts now stepped forward to help other families in crisis. The corner store where Tommy bought his candy created a Hope account, allowing customers to donate their change to families facing medical emergencies. Other shops followed suit, creating a network of support that extended far beyond Valley Oak Drive. But perhaps the most profound impact was on Tommy himself. The boy who had stood behind a candy stand, desperate to save his mother, discovered something powerful about community and perseverance. His school counselor noted a change in him, a new confidence, not born of success, but of knowing that even the smallest actions could lead to meaningful change. Sarah's recovery progressed steadily through the fall. Her hair began growing back, curling softly around her face. Her strength returned gradually, marked by small victories. Walking to the mailbox, preparing breakfast, sitting in the garden she had once tended so carefully. Each step forward was celebrated by the growing circle of supporters who had been touched by her story. The media's attention eventually shifted to other stories, but the changes on Valley Oak Drive remained. Neighbors who had once passed each other with casual waves now stopped to talk, sharing concerns and celebrations alike. The spirit of Tommy's Candy Stand, that simple belief that ordinary people could help each other through extraordinary challenges, had taken root in the community's heart. 1 year after Keanu's visit to Valley Oak Drive, Sarah Martinez stood before a crowd at Cedars-Sinai's annual fundraising gala. Her hair had grown back, darker and clearer than before, and healthy color had returned to her cheeks. Tommy stood beside her, no longer the desperate little boy with a candy stand, but a confident 9-year-old who understood the power of never giving up. Sarah shared their story, her voice strong as she described those dark days when hope seemed out of reach. She spoke about her son's determination, about a stranger's kindness, and about how both had transformed not just their lives, but an entire community. The Candy Stand Fund had already helped 37 families afford critical medical treatments, creating a legacy far beyond their small corner of Los Angeles. Tommy's original cardboard sign found a permanent home in the hospital's main lobby, encased in glass alongside photos documenting their journey. Beneath it, a plaque reads, "Sometimes hope comes in the smallest packages. Sometimes heroes come in the form of a little boy with a candy stand. And sometimes angels wear black t-shirts and ride motorcycles." Keanu remained connected to the family in his characteristic, understated way. He never sought recognition for his role in Sarah's recovery, but his foundation continued its work quietly, efficiently, helping more families find their way through similar struggles. When asked about the incident in interviews, he always redirected attention to Tommy's initiative and the broader message about community support. The corner of Valley Oak and Maple Drive became known as Hope Corner. The city installed a small bronze plaque commemorating Tommy's candy stand, and local children often left their own signs and messages there, creating an ever-changing monument to the power, determination, and kindness. Sarah eventually returned to teaching, though not before starting a support group for parents facing similar battles. Every Wednesday afternoon, she met with families in the hospital cafeteria, sharing stories and strategies, her own experience becoming a beacon for others navigating the stormy waters of serious illness. Tommy's final words at the gala summed up the lasting impact of that remarkable summer day. "My mom always told me that angels come in many forms. Sometimes they're regular people who stop at a candy stand. Sometimes they're neighbors who buy candy they don't need. And sometimes they're little kids who refuse to give up. But the real miracle isn't just about one person. It's about all of us helping each other one candy bar at a time." As the audience rose in a standing ovation, Sarah hugged her son close, both of them knowing that their story had become something larger than themselves. A reminder that even in our darkest moments, hope can arrive in the most unexpected ways, turning an ordinary street corner into sacred ground where miracles still happen.